I'm here tonight to talk to you about learning style and emotional regulation. So what I mean by that is I'm here to talk to you about how your child might best learn and how you might help them to manage their emotions more effectively. So children with autism, at times when they hear a lot of talking, especially a lot of abstract information, can get confused. So even things like, come here, which you might think is a very simple concept, here, when you think about it, is somewhat of an abstract concept. Or put your bag down there. We're doing that later, okay? All things that you naturally say as a parent or perhaps a teacher or anyone working with a child with autism, we say those things on a daily basis. I'm not suggesting that you don't say those things, but what is helpful is to provide some supports to help your child understand better what it is you actually mean, what you're getting at. So in typical development, for typically developing children use multiple sources of information to figure out what's going on, what the context is. So typical children look at things like, what's everybody else doing in the room? What's my mum's facial expression like? They just naturally are tuned in to these kinds of things. Children with autism, however, have more difficulty in figuring out those kinds of subtleties that go on in a social environment like that. On top of that, then, they can find it difficult if you add in a lot of language. So we're all naturally connected social people who want to say, it's okay, it's fine, don't worry, calm down. Come on, sit down and do this little painting here, it'll be fine. We add lots and lots of language onto a situation which at times can be quite stressful, and then we add language and think it's calming when actually at times it can be anything but that. Now talk to your child, talk away to your child. Tell them what's going on, have conversations if you can, even if they're pre-verbal children, talk to them. But just think about it when they're stressed or when they're anxious or when you can see that. Think about reducing your own language a little bit and think about their learning style. What research would show us is that children with autism have a visual learning style, and if you think about it, a lot of us do. You go to a restaurant, for example, and the waiter says, here are the specials tonight. This is what you're having. We've got soup, we've got lamb, we've got steak, we've got fish, we've got a vegetarian option, we've got panna cotta for dessert. And I know if you're like me, what you'll say is, just give me the last thing you said. Whereas if they show you, oh, here's the specials, then you'll be able to take a moment, process the information, and decide what it is you actually want. Oftentimes, with children with autism, it's much easier if you give them a visual support to help them understand what the expectation is. A lot of times, they miss the expectation. So they also at times need more processing time, which is why visual strategies really support language. Language is transient. Once I have said something, it's gone. If you missed it, it's too late. It's out there. If I sign something, it's gone immediately. If you missed it, it's too late. With something visual, it's right there. It's permanent. Your child can check in on it, and quite often that has a very calming effect. So what you're doing is teaching your child specific skills in a way that they understand. This particular one says, sit down, hands down, mouth closed, wait. Wouldn't it be nice if that worked like magic? It does not work like magic, and quite oftentimes people get tired of using visual strategies because they try it a couple of times and they say, oh, we did that when my child was younger, we used that, or it doesn't work, or yes, we use them, they're sitting over there in that drawer. Because people get a little bit disappointed when things don't go the way they thought it would go. But what sometimes we miss is the importance of teaching these kinds of strategies on the good days. Okay, so you use them on the good days so that on the more difficult days, you've got something to fall back on that isn't language, which we know raises the difficulties at times for our children with autism, especially in anxious or difficult situations. Peter Vermeulen, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he runs a centre in Geneva for children with autism, and he calls it a centre for concrete thinkers. I think that's a lovely way to describe it. So your children think in a concrete way, so we want to teach them in a way that they can learn easily. And what Peter Vermeulen says is that actually they have all of these range of abilities of understanding what is going on and of understanding what the expectations are. But actually what's difficult in autism is reading the social context. I mean, if you think about that, that is difficult. So how far away do you stand from someone, for example? There's no easy answer to that. How many times do you provide eye contact before you look away? How do you talk to your school principal or head? Do you talk to them differently than you do to your peer? To children with autism, that's not obvious. So they have these difficulties with understanding the context, which Peter Vermeulen would suggest leads to these difficulties with social communication, with flexible thinking, and with challenging behaviours at times. So it's a very interesting way of thinking about. So what we want to do is to provide help with understanding the expectation, and that is what visual strategies do. Indeed, I would suggest that this is your starting point, okay? Every child is different, and we have certainly learned that very much so this week with the project that we've been doing with Gina. But your child generally do have tendencies to learn in a visual manner. It's a matter of standing back and looking at what makes sense to them. So some children, for example, will understand objects of reference. So you show them the car keys, they'll know it's time to go to the car. You show them a cup for come and get a drink, they'll understand it's time to get a drink. You might show them a ball for going outside. You see where I'm going with this. For other children, they don't need objects of reference. They need maybe the written word or a symbol that might say, okay, it's outside time now, it's time for circle, whatever it happens to be. But these things can be really effective and really calming for our children. They indeed bridge a gap between verbal language and understanding the expectation. What they do is decrease anxiety. Lots of our children can be quite anxious. You imagine if you don't understand the social expectation in a situation, that tends to raise anxieties. If they understand better what's expected, anxieties tend to decrease. Of course then, well-being increases. And if you're in a good state, like a calm and alert state, then that's going to promote learning, and that is what we're all aiming for. So here are some examples of some kinds of visual strategies that you can use. We have used the one on the bottom left-hand side, just a simple whiteboard this week to show the children what was going on, and it is most effective, really without exception. But for children who maybe don't understand line drawings like that, the one beside it there that says first then, use objects of reference like I talked about earlier. For other children, they might use symbols like Amy at the top there, who's got a lot of signs to tell her what's going on the whole day. And then this little boy just used a very simple, what's next, all finished kind of a schedule. This is just your starting point. But we all use these visuals, these calendars, and they help regulate our emotions also. So I would suggest it's a starting point to build on other things, to help with challenging behaviour, to help with emotional regulation, and to better help your child understand the expectations of the day. Thank you very much.